Hello and welcome to Soul Guide Society, where we take you on a journey of self-discovery as we explore a wide range of topics from the basics of astrology and energy work to deeper mysteries of consciousness and spirituality. My name is Pathway Light by Corey.
And my name is Larina Alines, and through our insightful discussions and practical exercises, we aim to demystify these concepts and empower you to integrate them into your daily life for greater awareness, healing, and personal growth.
And as a disclaimer, unless otherwise stated, no one on this podcast is a medical, legal, or financial professional, and content discussed should not be taken as a replacement for medical, legal, or financial professional advice. Hey y'all, welcome in. So today we are going to be talking about transitioning and when someone transitions to the other side, how our communication and connection with them is not necessarily lost entirely, but it's rather a matter of reorganizing and relearning how to communicate and connect with them beyond the veil.
Yes. Yes, I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you guys. Corey and I have had a few conversations regarding this randomly, sporadically, honestly, throughout our just normal back and forths. And we were like, you know what? It's time to share this with the people because I feel like at the end of the day, you guys, a lot of us have our own gripes and our own misunderstandings and our own attempts to understand what to do when someone passes or when we feel like we need to connect to someone that may no longer be here. And me and Corey always have the conversation on what we do, so why not share it with you?
Yeah, and I feel like today's episode is really supposed to be more of a starting point for a lot of people who don't really know where to start after somebody has passed. I have gone through a lot of people transitioning to the other side over the past few years. And I know the first time that it happened to me, even though I was already in the spiritual community, I still didn't know how do I even start to communicate with them.
Yeah.
And it's not the same. It's not as having a normal back-to-back conversation like we're having here. It's
Yeah.
entirely different. So
Yeah, I completely agree. I also want to say, yeah, this is the start of just having this conversation. This is just the beginning, but in the theme of just the beginning, where this is just the beginning for us in general, this is just the beginning for a podcast with SGS, right? Soul Guide Society. This is our first one, right? And then it is just the beginning of the year. So this is it's a great theme of just starting things and seeing where we're gonna go. And yeah, just being able to inform other people on how they can start when it comes to spirituality and when it comes to transitioning and being able to communicate to people on the other side.
yes, absolutely. And I think, being the astrologer that I am and that we now are, now that
Yeah.
you're a trained astrologer, for any astrologers listening out there, we also started this recording at around 5:45 p.m., January 5th, 2025. We'll say just as a midpoint, we'll say like Connecticut, use like the center of Connecticut,
Yeah,
as the
somewhere over there.
midpoint between us.
Yeah.
So we just kind of started it there. But the reason why I'm bringing that up too is because we are in essentially the height of Capricorn season, and we are going to be moving into Aquarius season soon. But the height of Capricorn season is ruled over by Saturn, which rules boundaries and constrictions and restrictions. So, in addition to what can be perceived by a lot of people as some of the hardest parts of their life when somebody transitions to the other side, now we also have the ruler of our time right now being Saturn, which is about constriction and restriction, which can make that perception
A
even,
little harder.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. The boundary, it even is symbolic itself with Saturn, right? Because the boundaries in general and the boundary between life and death, right? And learning how to get around that boundary. And that's actually quite interesting too, because if we think about where Saturn is, which I believe is in Pisces, and needing that flow and needing to know how to get through that flow to be able to communicate, is super important. Also, Pisces is the communicator of spirit, right? So it's the
yeah,
closest to
yeah.
psychicness. So it all correlates. It's going to be very interesting to see how it works as we go.
Yes, and Venus also just entered into Pisces, which is its exaltation 3 days ago too. But that's a whole nother conversation that we can have at another time. But I'm more saying for those of us who are astrology geeks out there, this is a great time to really look into boundaries and how you can kind of reach beyond those boundaries to still have those heartfelt connections as well, especially with Venus entering into that sign.
Yeah, a
So,
thousand percent.
with all that being said, I really kind of want to start out with how do we connect with
Yeah,
with the other side?
the other side. Yeah, I mean, I guess to start it off, to share a little bit of, some of the ways that I know how I do it personally, because there are so many ways, right? There are so many moments of signs and symbols and feelings that we all encounter at some point in our lives. And we can even say some people who don't encounter it still have memories and ideas and wishes too, and so I think there are so many different ways on in how we encounter the afterlife and how we go about communicating with energies that are on the other side, that a list is long, and it'll be hard to put it all in, this hour and a half of a podcast. But I do want to say that personally, like if I were to just bring up like even my own position or my own things that I've done to communicate, I think one of the biggest telltale signs, the ones that I think everyone is used to, everyone's seen in movies, even not to say that it's theatrical, but movies, what is it? Art resembles life or
Yeah.
something like
Yep.
that. Yeah, like we do see them, and when we have moments where we'll see, we've talked about this, Corey, we'll see cardinals, we'll see red cardinals, or we'll see the number 4 consistently, or something like that. And I think I think what it really comes down to, and we're going to definitely dive into this, is noticing those things and being aware of them instead of just letting them slide or questioning them.
Yeah. And something else that kind of just popped into my brain too, that people often just look by and they think, oh, my brain's just trying to cope too, is the dreams that we have about people who have passed. And again, a lot of times people will sit there and think, oh, my brain's just trying to cope with the fact that they have passed. But, and I think in some sense, in one way or another, you're connecting with that energy, whether
Yeah.
it's actually connecting with the spirit that goes to the other side, depending on what your belief is, or if you're connecting with the simple memory that you have with that person, that's still a form of connecting with them after they've passed away.
Yeah.
So regardless of kind of what perspective you're approaching it from, there's ways that you can connect with someone who has transitioned to the other side. It's
Yeah.
just different than what we're used to.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that was the part that we wanted to hone in on the most, that we were like, you know what, why don't we just talk about this, right? Was realizing that when someone passes, it's obviously not going to be the same as having them here physical. Like that is something that you feel when it happens, that when it happens, that no matter what anyone says, they can't change that bit, and then it's like when you are ready to, okay, acknowledge, not even accept, right? But like acknowledge that, okay, this person is no longer here, and move into how can I go about reconnecting with that energy that I knew, so that I can continue with life, or cope with life a little bit better with them not being here physically. What are those steps, and that was the thing that like really caught us, right? It was like, okay, now what are those steps for us? And I think dreams is a good one, right? Because no matter what, you are absolutely right. Dreams, and I mean you as the listener and you, Corey, but dreams are a lot of the time our subconscious way of of being able to deal with the passing of someone.
Yes.
And they are, but I always say, and I say this to my clients all the time, when they come to a moment of like, why, like, why did I see this? Oh, maybe it was just my subconscious, like just telling me, just trying to make me feel better or whatever. Maybe it was just my logical mind trying to put pieces together. I always tell my clients, okay, And then part of you, because they usually tell me, oh, part of me feels like, oh, it was a communication thing, right? They feel like this a spirit, there's whatever the spirit was trying to speak to them. I always tell them, well, why not both? Right? Why can it not be, yes, your subconscious is trying to help you, and also maybe the spirit is trying to help you too. Maybe that energy is trying to help you too. Does it harm you either way? Right? Or is it working?
Yeah. I that's a phrase that I think people are gonna hear a lot come from us is why
Yeah.
not both?
Why not both?
Because we get into these conversations a lot, and that's kind of sparked the premise for Soul Guide Society, where we talk about the different perceptions of things, right? Whether it be magic, whether it be transitioning, whether it be astrology.
Energy, yeah. Hmm.
And one of the biggest things is why not both? Why can't it be a science and a spiritual perspective? Why can't it be a potential placebo and magic at the same
I was just
time?
thinking placebo.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think the fact that it also goes into connecting with the other side is a very key piece of it. Why can't it be just a red cardinal flying through your yard, but
Yeah.
it also could be that spirit
Yeah.
coming to visit you at the very time that you needed it,
Hmm.
right? Why can't it be both?
Yeah. If it's not harming you, if it's not harming anyone else, it's one of my favorite, one of my favorite things to say. Why not both? Um, yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you when it comes to that. I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going into like specific things, right? Because now that we understand, okay, why not both? Specifically, what do those symbols and signs look like to other people? And again, I said it could be anything. We said it could be dreams, right? We said it could be we specifically said red cardinals, right? But that doesn't red cardinals could mean nothing to someone, right? So I feel like, and I'm gonna ask you and then I'll share my opinion. But like for other people, would you say that like it depends on what truly resonates with you? That could be that spirit or that could be that energy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things with my grandmother, she passed in 2022, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2022. These past few years, they all just blend together. She passed away in 2022, and one of the biggest reminders for me, right? And it sounds a little bit abnormal, but when I smell popcorn, and I could just be walking down the street and I'll smell popcorn. And popcorn was one of the biggest, like, she loved popcorn. Like, literally, popcorn was served at her funeral. Like,
Oh
before her
wow,
funeral, we
she
were all like,
loved
they had
popcorn.
tables, like, they had popcorn at the tables.
I love that.
Um, it was a huge piece of she loved popcorn. She was the popcorn lady when they had the events in town. She
Mm-hmm.
had her popcorn stand that she would be the popcorn lady for all of the
Mm-hmm.
events. So for me, my connection with her is popcorn. So it really can be anything
Yeah.
that is personal, anything that allows you to connect with that person. And this again brings us to it doesn't matter what your belief is, what your religious perspective, what your spiritual perspective is, you're still connecting with that energy, right? For
Mm-hmm.
me, I do believe in an afterlife and the other side. So for me, when I smell that popcorn, I think and I know she's around me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody who doesn't necessarily believe on the other side, you can still connect with that person through that memory, right? If I didn't believe in the other side, the simple remembering of her every time I smelt popcorn is still a way of me communicating
Connecting
or
to the
connecting with
energy.
her.
And I do agree. Like I feel like even on that aspect with the two complete different sides, you are not, alone if you do not like it's not that it doesn't exist if you do not believe it doesn't exist, right? It's more that it exists in a different it can exist in a different way for you, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the afterlife, it doesn't have to be a spirit, it doesn't have to be a religion. You could completely not believe in anything, but know that you had this relationship with someone and they taught you something or they showed you something or you have this memory of them. And so whenever you see them, you are still working with that energy of that person. And whether it was residual energy or now energy, it was still energy. And no matter what, you can't deny that energy exists because scientifically it does, so you're always interacting. And I love that. I love being able to include everyone. Everyone in it, so yeah, I completely agree. But when it comes to yeah, specific things, I agree. Like I said, I was gonna give my opinion on like symbols and things like that. I want to further emphasize that whatever resonates with you in the moment and the kind, in the connection that you had with that person is usually what is connected to that energy of that person. So while they are transitioned, while they are gone from the physical, it doesn't mean that their memory is, it doesn't mean that their energy is. And so that can appear in anything. For me personally, when I see others kindness right now. It might not be the same forever, but definitely right now, I will always go back and think of my brother-in-law who just passed recently because he was so very kind. He was referred to as, I believe, Switzerland, where like he never really made a judgment on people without hearing both sides. And even then, he wouldn't be pulled to one side or the other. He would just hear the logic within it. And like when I see people do that, when I see people show that kind of unconditional kindness, I will always think of him and think, for me, I do believe in an afterlife as the same way that you did. For me, I'm always going to think that was him, like because the energy is what he was. So I completely agree. Like,
Yeah.
like I think that you can definitely take the time to see those moments, recognize those moments, and relate those moments to that person. And that is a way of communicating with them. But there are other ways.
Yes, there are a lot of other ways. I mean, something I literally just thought of as you were talking about how every time you kind of see that kindness is how everything is interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the major things, and I will preface with I don't necessarily know how 100% true this is, but one of the things that I've recently been reading is that water molecules have been the same on Earth. Like we haven't had new water molecules like since asteroids and new asteroids have entered our atmosphere,
Yeah.
bringing water molecules here.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, the same water that we are ingesting, intaking, interacting with on a daily basis could be the same exact water that dinosaurs were once interacting with and engaging with. It's the same energy. And from a spiritual perspective, if we can engage with the same water molecules that a dinosaur once took a bath in, is it not reasonable that we would be able to engage with energies that within the past couple of years have transitioned to a different side?
Yeah, 1,000%. I completely see that connection and that possibility of still being able to engage, maybe not as physically as water, because water is
Right.
always here. The molecules are always we're able to touch them. But I do think like there is a level of being able to connect to that energy that'll never go away. My aunt is still on this plane, she's still physical, but her consciousness is not necessarily. So like even with her, like I still have moments of hearing her voice in my head or hearing her sing. Whenever I hear the song, You Are My Sunshine, instantly it's my aunt singing to me. Like I don't care what anyone says, that's her. Like because that was one of her favorite songs to sing. And I know like when she sang it, it was to make sure someone felt safe or someone felt good. So that's what I take it as. And that's how I communicate with her, even if I can't necessarily do it in the physical.
Yeah. And I think that this is going a little bit kind of at, out there and not necessarily off track, but a little bit abstract, right? If we look at quantum physics and then we look at quantum entanglement,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how quantum entanglement is essentially the theory for anybody out there who doesn't know. And again, I am not a quantum mechanic. I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm not a professional in this area. But from my understanding, quantum entanglement is essentially two molecules or two atoms or two particles, I'm sorry, two particles, regardless of distance from where they are, being connected through space and time. So if something happens to one particle, something that's 200 million light years away,
Yep.
is affected at the exact same time,
Yep.
regardless of the distance. And that kind of is an indicator of some of the underlying energies and underlying mechanics within the universe that we don't necessarily have a full grasp on yet. And how even that underlying mechanic is potentially a gateway for us to be able to connect with spirits on the other side or energies that have transitioned to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually cool because I was just thinking about how, yes, like with quantum entanglements, how one atom affects the other depending on what that atom is doing, if they're connected. I thought that was very significant to not only like a personal story for me, but also even today. Like today, I was listening to I was watching a show, and this woman was talking about how she, uh, essentially, she had like fallen asleep because she wasn't feeling well. And she woke up and in the middle of the night after falling asleep, and her heart was racing and her head was pounding, and she just felt anxious and just all over the place. And the first person that came to mind was her brother. And before anyone could call her, she already knew. Like she had already known, she already felt that he was gone. And then she got the call that he was gone, maybe 30 minutes later. And she did try to call him a couple times beforehand, no answer, and she just knew. Like, and she questioned it obviously, and but she just knew. And like that for me, people can say, people are connected somehow in some weird way. But to be honest, with quantum physics, with quantum entanglement, that gives us almost a not as solid, obviously, because it's still a theory. But it gives us, well, the atom thing, I don't know if that's a theory. I think that they've noticed that happening. But quantum physics is its own, science. But it gives us a solid kind, almost solid kind of understanding a little bit of how we could possibly feel someone passing if we're nowhere near them, you
It gives
know?
us a foothold to stand upon and
Yeah,
kind of work towards climbing this huge mountain of science that it's going to be hard for us to understand.
a thousand
And
percent.
with that being said, those of us that aren't quantum physicists, which is the majority of the
Of us,
population,
all of
and
us,
yeah,
99.8% of us.
right. Um, a lot of that stuff is gonna kind of go right over our heads, and it took a
Yeah,
while for me to understand how quantum entanglement could even be possible, and I still don't understand how it's
yeah,
possible, but it is a good, I guess, underlying condition
yeah,
of the universe that
yeah.
gives us an example of what
Mhm.
it can look like to connect to something regardless of space, regardless of time
Right.
in a split instant.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, no matter what, we are all atoms. That's, obvious, right? And we've connected to each other once or twice. I'm sure she's hugged her brother, so and it's not a, obviously it's not a fail, there's no there's no fail safe here, like it's not a end all be all definite, right? But it's something, and it's something that will be built on and continued to be studied until we do fully understand it, or understand it to a point that we can make it exist and make it actual and make it foundational. So yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, for now, part of the reason why we're going over all of this is to kind of exemplify that there are parallels with you being
Mhm.
able to connect with people on the other side.
Yeah,
And you can still communicate with them some way or another. It's not going to be the same as, Larina and I having this conversation back and forth for you
yeah.
guys and talking about this.
It'd be
But
awesome to be able to do a Zoom session with the other side.
yeah, so oh my God, to be able to do a Zoom session with the other side would be amazing. I think there's actually like I feel like there's a movie out there where it's like you could just video chat with
Oh, that's
the other
crazy.
side. I
I've
literally
never
think
seen
I
it.
feel like I saw like an ad for a movie that literally they could like video chat or like see a movie or
That's
see
so
like a
cool.
TV recording from the other side. But like it wasn't like an act, like it was like a fictional thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah, of course.
but
That was
it was
actual. I
but
don't think we'd be having this conversation if that was actual.
yeah, no, no. But what it exemplifies is our need to
Yeah,
have something to find meaning within that loss,
yeah,
to be able to find comfort and to be able to find connection with the people that we've lost, you know, to be able to work through that grief and to be able to work through everything that we're feeling. Part of that
Mhm.
is connecting with that energy and having that conversation in a different way,
Yeah,
right?
1,000%.
The conversations are done through the cardinals. The conversations are done through, you know, I mean, I swear sometimes I'm scrolling through Facebook and a random video will pop up. I'll be like, okay, you know what?
Heard.
Heard, heard.
Yeah, I will not put away cell phones and social media at all when it comes to spirits trying to connect to us, because even when you think about the way that cell phones work and the way that Wi-Fi works and the way that things like that work and how the energy connects even there, I would not be surprised if other energies could help move the algorithm or whatever. Like, you
I
know,
mean, the way that I see it, and if anybody ever tells me that technology can't affect us or doesn't have that link to spirituality, I always say that I think it was the MRI machine that was
mm,
discovered by accident. Um,
oh, I didn't know about this.
yeah, so or what it wasn't the MRI machine that was discovered by accident. It was
Like an X-ray. It has to be something that sees through things.
yeah, it was some sort of X-ray. It was some sort of basically
Yeah,
imagery system that is
yeah.
now used within the medical field. And I don't want to misquote or anything like
Right,
that.
right.
So I will say, just in general, there was some sort of imagery system within the medical field that they used that they found by accident that allowed
Mhm.
us to see through things that wasn't necessarily there. Um, at least based off of our own perception.
I'm actually looking it up for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think yeah, social media, Wi-Fi, all of those things. Um, yeah. So it was Roentgen's accidental X-rays. So he created the very first X-ray by capturing the image of the bones of his wife's hand, but he didn't do it on purpose. Like, apparently he applied a high voltage to the tube and noticed that the positive and negative electrodes within the tube caused it to emit light. So he was able to see into the hands. And he kept trying to do that until it showed him an X-ray. So the first time, of course, it was very blurred and skewed and stuff like that. So he found ways to make it better. But the very first time, he did not mean to do it. He was like, wait, what is happening here? I just wanted a brighter picture.
Yes. And part of the reason why I brought that up was because it shows us that there are underlying energies constantly at play.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He stumbled upon that imagery technique by
Mm-hmm.
accident, right?
Yeah.
He didn't mean to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
when he did, well, now we're able to see through the body in a way that previous to that we never were able to before.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same can be applied to spirituality and spirits that have transitioned to the other side, right? There's an
100%.
underlying mechanic there. We just don't yet understand
Know
it
what it
fully
is.
to
Yeah.
be able to see through that veil.
Yeah. And that's all that is. That's all that is. I will always believe that that is all that is. Some of us are finished and like, nope, physical is physical and that's all it is. But I want to say that it's that we don't understand and we haven't understand we our whole life we don't understand a lot of things until we do understand them. So I do think at some point in life or in our passings, we will understand it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um,
And part of the other reason I brought that up, I almost forgot about this too, was we were talking about technology, right? And if there are underlying existing energies that we accidentally stumble upon to form an X-ray machine, you can't tell me that there are not underlying energies and things going on behind the technological level that a spirit or you know, something from the other side can't manipulate to some degree.
some degree. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, but to go back, because obviously these are, our theories. These are what we believe. To kind of rewind a little bit, and get back into just the ways that you connect. So we've established, most of whatever is your sign, right? Whatever you connect is what you connect. There are other ways though, and uh there are people who use other methods to speak to the other side. We have mediums, me being a certified one. We have psychics. We have a lot of different ways that we connect to the other side. So don't forget that you have a multitude of options. We have some ethical concerns sometimes when it comes to mediums and things like that. So that we definitely will go into. But before we even do that, there are very good people out there who do this service very well. And they do help close gaps between communicating because a lot of us will say, yes, we get signs. And I do ask that you take those signs seriously. We take them seriously. As spiritualists ourselves, we always take them seriously. You take them seriously and you let them flow. Like you don't take them and hold them and obsess over them, but take them and let them flow. But also there is still the ability for you to be able to communicate through mediums and be able to uh close that gap even more and hear words from someone else, that makes it a little bit more physical for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Mediums are a great way to be able to finalize that last conversation and bring
Bring
that
closure.
conversation back into the physical realm.
Mhm.
But it's not a one, first of all, it's not a one-stop shop, right? Sometimes you go to a medium and that medium does not have the necessary receptive capabilities of the message that the spirit is trying to get across, right? For instance, Larina, if you came across a spirit that started speaking Mandarin to you,
I'm just gonna be
you,
like, she's speaking another language.
yes, and you would
Not
have
sure what
no
she's saying.
idea how to communicate that
Yeah.
conversation. So, sometimes it is you have to find the right medium, and just
Yeah.
because the medium doesn't say correct thing doesn't mean that they're not
Wrong.
a medium. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah, that too.
yeah, yeah. But with that also being said, desperation can lead
Obsession.
towards obsession.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
We did talk about that. We said, okay, so yes, like I I want to say that desperation, yes, desperation can lead towards obsession. And I was going to hit that mark when you said something else. So mediums are literally what they're called, right? Mediums will come to a medium between the physical world and the spiritual world to try to connect to that energy, to try to get that message through. But mediums, psychics, even us, like even people who don't practice those things, the language is always going to be skewed, quite similar to, and I love using this analogy, quite similar to when you're trying to find a radio station and you can barely hear it and you're not in the right area and it may not come through properly. So we might get, again, something in a different language and we're like, what is this channel? I need to tune it to a different channel or I don't understand this. But this is what I'm hearing and having to to reiterate that to someone else. So mediums are not at all a one-stop shop, as Corey said. But they are helpful, right? They're very helpful in the sense that they will give you some of the things that you need, but as he brought up, desperation leads to obsession. Discernment is quite important. And so when you are speaking to a medium, you are using your discernment and not to go in to being like, don't go in, afraid, right? But go in, with your discernment alive,
yeah.
with your awareness aware, and accept what you get, in a sense that, okay, this could mean anything. I'll figure it out as I go. I always say, take everything that is said from anyone with a grain of salt
Yes.
and take what truly resonates with you. And again, let it flow.
Yep. Absolutely. And the same can be said for any divination practice or anything of that nature. I mean, even with astrology, there's so many different forms of astrology. My form of astrology is a form of astrology. It
Mhm.
is not the right form of astrology. It is a right form of astrology. There are so many other forms of astrology. Same thing goes for mediumship. You could have some mediums that go into a trance-like state, some mediums who write, some mediums who, um,
Here.
they're clairaudient,
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's all going to be it's going to be
Different.
different.
Hmm.
But being able to use your discernment is key because there are frauds out there,
Hmm. a
right?
thousand percent
I work in a credit union. My 9 to 5, as some people would call it, is a credit union, and I see people get scammed all of the time.
Hmm.
Not then I'm not going to say it's always mediums or whatever. There's so many scams out there, whether it be check scams,
Hmm.
partner scams, family crisis scams, whatever it may be. One of the scams that I have seen
Warranty
is
scams.
warranty scams, yeah.
Car warranties.
These car warranty scams, yeah.
You can use
But
your discernment very well on the phone with that car warranty person.
yes, yeah. So using your discernment is going to be key when you're looking for mediums as well,
Mhm.
because you are going to have people who will see, like we said, that desperation leads to obsession, and people will see that desperation, that obsession, and capitalize on it if they can.
A thousand
So
percent.
having an awake discernment, an active discernment. I like the way that you put
Yeah.
that.
An aware
Um,
discernment, yeah.
yeah, it's going to be key. It's going to be the key thing to help keeping you from being exploited for your money when you're just trying to connect with this other person so that you can heal with them.
Yeah.
Um, but I also don't want that to discourage anybody from seeking mediums. Just use your discernment. Just use your discernment.
Yeah, 1,000%. I completely agree. The discernment is super important. And remember, you don't have to go to a medium if you don't want to. And if you don't feel like you can trust them, you can always just go about your own science, your own intuition, your own knowing. But I think the point of this, one of the biggest points of this for us, is to let you know that it doesn't stop, and it doesn't have to stop at least
Right.
at, the passing. There is a transition that we believe in one way or another. It does not have to be the transition into the afterlife. It can be just a transition of energy and how you go about that energy within itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of expand this further, beyond people transitioning from life to death as well. But also, if we're looking at transitioning just in general life periods, there are some cases where people have to move out of countries or they have to shift countries, and then you lose someone from that nature. And all of these same concepts can still be applied, right? People say all the time, I'm sending you so much love, right? I'm
You just
sending you
gave
so
me
much love and I'm
energy.
sending you so much light. Can you not find that around you?
Yep. Hmm.
Right? That the living person can send the energy. Take that anywhere.
Yeah,
Take that
that's actually
anywhere.
beautiful. You could do that with literally anything. That just made me think of like breakups, right? Because like within a breakup, you could like move away from someone, but you can be left with these unfortunate residual feelings, or you could be left with these great feelings of like, I learned something, or you can be left with both. But the energy that was from that other person is going to be with you. It's never going to go away because you've had moments where you're in a new relationship and you're like, this happened in my last relationship. And so if that energy can still live with you, then someone whose passing's energy can still live with you,
Yes,
and it's up to you to give that power or not.
exactly.
Give
Exactly.
it that power. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's up to you
That
to
was a great analogy, Corey, because to think of like we do it for the living. Why would we not do it for those who passed? Why would we not give them more energy as well?
Yep.
Instead of just thinking it's gone and it's over. I know it's probably because it's still physical, but it can be physical and still never be there again.
Right.
So yeah, that was a beautiful analogy, example, 1,000%.
And it more indicates why paying attention and just being aware is going to be the biggest thing that allows you to connect with anybody, regardless of whether or not they transitioned to the other side, whether or not they moved away, whether or not they're an ex that you're trying to move on from. I mean, recently I watched Netflix and Hulu and everything. You know,
Same.
I'm normal. I'm a human being. I was watching recently one of the shows that I watched was Station 19. And it one of the things on Station 19 was they were dealing with, people who have passed away and never having to be able to have that conversation.
Mm.
Um, and one of the themes that came up in one of the episodes was they literally just picked up their phone, right? They didn't actually call anybody, but they just picked up their phone, they put it to their ear, and just act like they were just having a conversation with them. They were
Mhm.
invoking the person on the other side of the line to have that final conversation,
Yeah.
right? And if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. There's quite literally no limit. And anybody tells you that there is a right or a wrong way to
Mhm.
connect with somebody else, regardless if they're still in the living realm or not,
Mhm.
they're lying to you. There's no right or wrong way, as long as it isn't harming anybody, as long as you aren't
Yeah.
sacrificing
Yeah.
anything
Do
or doing
away
blood rituals.
1,000%. Do away with that belief that, and I think this is a belief that was put on us as children, that if you're talking to yourself, you're crazy. Like if you're talking to yourself and you're answering back, you're nuts. Because I think a lot of us people, like we like ask ourselves questions all the time. So sometimes we'll have our own back and forths in our head or on the phone. Because honestly, if we're not on the phone with anyone, we're talking to ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Um, sometimes that's how we work through stuff. It's human nature. It's not insane. What insane would most definitely probably be if it's harming you or harming someone around you. If
yes,
it's interrupting, and by harming we don't just mean like physically hurting. If it's interrupting your daily life, this is when it's something to be like, okay, this is something that I might have to go to someone for,
yeah,
right? But if it's not harming you and it is helping you get through things, it is not harming people around you and it is not interrupting your daily life. Now, don't get me wrong, grief is allowed to interrupt your daily life. Sometimes you can't move for a while, right?
absolutely.
But when it comes to, again, we go back to harm. When it comes to harm, that's what's the most important. If this is helping you move through things and move your energy on, onto whatever comes next, right? Then what is the harm in doing it?
Right. Yep, absolutely. And as long as the goal is healing and connection, um, like you said, what's the harm?
Yeah.
Right? There's do away with the fear or the worry. If it goes against your religion, find another way to connect with that energy without, directly imposing upon your religion. Having that conversation, that's a psychological technique too. It's
Yeah.
just there, it's like writing a letter to somebody, writing a final letter. You don't necessarily have to communicate with somebody on the other side to communicate with somebody on the other side. You can
Exactly.
communicate with a memory that you had with them without directly trying to reach a spirit. And I say that because I want to give multiple perspectives, and I understand that there are some religions, some cultures that connecting to the other side is just not acceptable. And that's understandable. I'm not here to say that that's right or wrong, but what I am here to do is say what you still can do is write out that final letter. What you still
Mhm.
can do is look for those memories that you have with that person and honor those memories and honor the energy. Like you said, find the kindness in the
Mhm.
person around you that reminds you of that person.
Yep.
Smell the popcorn that reminds you of that person. You don't have to try and connect with the person on the other side to still connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. I will say I feel like we've gone over a good amount.
Yes.
The first thing. I think we've said a lot. I hope that some of this has brought some solace to those of you that are grieving right now. Those of you that are even not grieving, but are just interested in what this looks like and sounds like and what you can do and the steps that you can take to stay connected um while also staying present. I think that it's important to remember, and I think we've gone over this. It's important to remember that your discernment is the most important. What's going on around you, the physical world is where you live. We can't that was one thing I wanted to throw into the desperation goes into obsession is a lot of the time what we'll do is we'll jump into that obsession and we'll use it as escapism. So just using your
Yes.
discernment because escapism will you don't want to deal with the real world, you don't want to deal with life without somebody, and you use everything you can to get out of it. So just be reminded that your daily life is the most important, and your progress and your healing is extremely important. And yeah, like that's really it. I feel like I don't know if there was anything else you'd like to touch on, Corey, before we go.
Yeah, no, nothing I wanted to touch on. Just that the most important thing is that throughout the process of transitioning or somebody transitioning again, whether or not it's from life to death, or from a relationship to not a relationship, or
Mhm.
from here to across the country, um, the goal should be reestablishing hope within your grief.
Yeah.
And refinding that. So as long as that's your goal, and as long as that's what you're working towards, that's all that matters.
Mhm.
So
Can I add to that hope? Can I add the word comfort as well?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Hope and comfort.
absolutely.
Because I think that's what we really look for is hoping that there's more to this and being comfortable where we are.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And looking for the messages that bring us that sense of comfort, even if it's for but a moment, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, that was great. I'm super excited um to see how you guys feel about this. If you guys want to leave a comments below in YouTube or on Spotify, you are more than welcome to. And, kind of let us know how you felt about not just this podcast, but the topic here and where you are and if you are grieving and how it helped you.
yeah, and if you're willing, also share your story and how you find your messages and how you find your connection, so others can potentially see that and maybe find a connection themselves through it. So,
1,000%.
all right, until next time, everybody, have a fantastic day, evening, week, month, whatever it shall be.
Bye, guys. This has been Soul Guide Society. I'm Larina Aligned, and you can find me at larina.aligned on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
And I'm Pathway Light by Corey, and you can find me at pathwaylightbycorey.com. We thank you for walking the path to alignment with us.
Till next time.